Hello, my friends. It's only been 2 days, but what can I say? Inspiration sparks when inspiration sparks. And it's just how it works. That's how the cookie crumbles, my friends. So I felt very inspired to jump on tonight, even though we don't have a lot of people right now. That's fine, because I really trust my inner guidance, my internal GPS when I feel inspired to jump on and connect with all of you. And I went old school tonight. I'm not using the fancy camera. I'm using the older camera. I'm just using my MacBook because it's a lot easier to see you guys. So the quality may not be as professional, but this is a lot more comfortable, to be honest. So hopefully you guys hear me properly, loud and clear. This is going to be an important video. It really is. It really, really, really is. I can even turn up my mic a little higher if you guys like. Hold on. Oh, actually, my bad. It's at the max. So we're good to go. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you. Oh, so apparently we have a bunch of people in the house. That's nice. Okay. Someone's saying no sound, but I think they just have their thing on mute. Alrighty then. Let us begin, my friends. So, oh man, you guys are gonna laugh at me. I have to get my laptop plug. 1 second. No judgment, right? No judgment. No judgment. No judgment, honey. I do this every time, but that's okay. It's endearing, right? So the reason why I titled this The Great Awakening is because I feel like a lot of people are going to need to hear this because more and more souls are coming online. The Great Awakening is real, my friends. It really is. And people are awakening in droves right now. In droves. So one of the main things that we wrestle with when we awaken and we finally find our voice again and we start to empower ourselves again is we go back and forth with whether or not to still see people like family members, friends, perhaps acquaintances. We really start to question this. We start to question, do I still want to associate with people who are not at my level of consciousness? Because when you awaken, your inner technologies that revolve around your psychic abilities, they start to kick into gear, full throttle. You start to gain insight into the quantum field. You start to gain more access to the energies that come off of people. And I always liken it to an elevator. When you're in an elevator, the more that you elevate or lift in consciousness, the more you can see. And you don't do this on purpose. It's just a byproduct of expanding your consciousness. So when you expand your consciousness, you become acutely aware of people's intentions when they speak to you, because you're able to scan their energy. You become acutely aware of their behaviors or how they perceive reality in relation to how they perceive themselves. So you can sense their judgments, you can sense their energies. The best metaphor I can use is if you can imagine that every individual on the planet has their own energy field. Think of it as a pond. It's a pond. And we all have a blend of energies. We all have really good attributes, and we all have not so good attributes that we're working on. We're learning. We are heightening in our consciousness to become better humans, to improve ourselves as a whole. So when you are in conversation with someone, you are interacting with their energy field, which is a pond or an ocean of energy. And within this pond, there are little fish swimming around, little energies, little frequencies swimming around. Some of these energies or these fish are conscious, they're kind, they're loving, and some of them are still very much in the shadow. They're still very much asleep, spiritually, very unconscious. Okay? So when you awaken, you become aware of the shadow side of life, of the hidden side of life, of what was previously in your blind spot, what was previously unseeable by you. Okay? So when you awaken, you become aware of what used to be unseeable. So everything in the shadow, all the unconscious starts to become visible. And many of us go, well, these people are not kind. I'm not going to align with them anymore. Or my family members are not treating me with respect. They're not respecting the boundaries that I've established with them. I've asserted myself. I've been firm. And still they tread on my own free will. Still they dishonor me. And so we think to ourselves, well, I'm not going to associate with them physically anymore. But here's the thing we have to understand is that when you awaken, you're still going to interact with people in the physical world, with family members, with friends, unless it's like one of those extreme cases where your family violated you or there was like sexual abuse and you want nothing to do with them. That's going to be its own respective soul contract, and you're not supposed to be in their lives anymore. But most of the time, we're not going to avoid or ignore people in our lives anymore. But because you've become a vibratory being, you're a vibratory being now, it's all going to be about the energetics that you interact with. So imagine that you have these little fish swimming around in people's energy field. And when they speak to you, there's like little fish jumping out at you. Some of them are conscious, some of them are unconscious. And everything that's conscious is directly in line with love. Because when you're conscious of others, you respect their free will. You don't impose yourself on them. You don't expect anything from them. You empower them, you support them, you accept them as they come. You accept them as they come. You are self-empowered, so you understand that by honoring other people's free will, they're self-empowered. You're not trying to tarnish that for them. Thank you so much, Luke, for that donation. Thank you, Lyra. Now, when you are unconscious, when these little fish are jumping out at you that are unconscious, unconsciousness is directly linked to shadow, to trauma, because it will say things like, you didn't meet my expectations. You didn't pick me up from the airport. You never reciprocate. You never do anything for me. So unconscious behavior is actually pain or trauma that hasn't been dealt with. And what unconscious people usually do is they project that pain onto us or onto other. We've all done this, okay? We've all done this. But unconsciousness is projection, it's blame, it's shame, it's gripping others, it's trying to control others and throwing a temper tantrum when we don't get our way with them. It's a lot of unconsciousness. So you're still physically going to be in the same room as people. The difference is going to be that you're going to be aware of all the energies and which energies you want to catch, which fish you want to catch, and which fish you're not going to catch because they're unconscious. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're having a conversation with a friend, and all of a sudden you can feel this negative energy coming off of them. They're talking smack about someone else. That's an unconscious behavior. And now you're able to detect this negativity coming off of them. It's a fish jumping out at you that's unconscious. You're not going to leave the room, but this whole thing is going to become an energetic board game where you say, okay, they're not being kind right now. I'm going to be silent. I'm not going to play in that unconscious reality. I'm not going to invest in that reality. I'm going to zip my mouth. I'm going to be silent because I'm choosing not to collude with that energy. Okay? I'm not going to collude with that energy. And silence is always golden. Always. Because silence is a reflector. It's a mirror. And that's what we're all here to do for each other, is to be teachers to one another. And by the way, I do this too. I've had many instances where I displayed unconscious behavior. An example I can think of is ATM, right? You go to a store, you make a purchase, you're like, how do I stick this in? And they're like, you just stick it in. And you're like, okay. And that person is helping you clean up your act. That person is helping you snap back into reality. That person is helping you to become more cognizant of what you're doing. So we're all here to become teachers to each other and mirrors for each other. So if you have someone who's unconscious and they are talking smack about someone else, or maybe they're playing the victim, the last thing you're going to do now that you're awake is feed their victimhood. You're not going to feed their victimhood anymore. You're not going to feed their disempowerment anymore. You're not going to feed that unconscious behavior anymore. You're going to be steadfast in your new self-empowered stance because you're only welcoming in love, i.e., consciousness, i.e., respect and honor to all individuals. So when you're awake now, you don't welcome in this slimy, petroleum-like black slime into your field anymore. Because if you do, then it means you're still engaging and enmeshing with that consciousness. Now, a lot of people who are awakening are afraid to go there. They're afraid to be brave enough and courageous enough to not let that energy slide underneath the door. They always leave a door cracked open and they allow that energy to just trickle in or to seep in. And that keeps them in these unconscious realities because they're still shaking hands with unconscious energies. They're still catching unconscious fish. The reason why it's so scary to go there is because we've been so heavily programmed and so intertwined with other people and what they might think of us if we are self-empowered. There's a lot of people pleasing going on. There's a lot of, I'm afraid to be judged by people who are bullies. So I'm going to keep playing the part. I'm going to keep playing the role of puffing up their ego and condoning their behavior. Because I'd rather not rock the boat. I'd rather not poke the bear, if you will. So it takes a lot of courage to start to realize and actualize the love that we are. And it really is the highest form of love. The highest form of love. Because if you don't do it, who will? If you're not that mirror, who's going to be that mirror? No one. And I think that our programming runs so deeply, my friends, that oftentimes we're afraid to go there. We're afraid our family is going to judge us if we say no to them. But the truth is, you're not saying no to them. You're saying yes to you. You're choosing you. You're choosing the highest measure of love. And the reason why it can be so scary is because when you decide to be steadfast in your vibrational stance, in this reinvented self, in this empowered self, the people around you are probably not going to like you. They're probably not going to like you because you're not conforming to the rules anymore. You're not adhering to the rules anymore. You're not stroking their ego anymore. So, of course, they're going to be thrown off by you. They're going to be thrown off by you. But that is the greatest service that you can offer people. It's the greatest frequency that you can lend to people. Because your silence is a chamber that echoes back to them what it is that they need to course correct, what it is that they need to clean up on their end. And if you keep feeding their own disempowerment, if you keep feeding their victimhood, then they're going to think they're right. They're going to think it's okay to bulldoze people. They're going to think it's okay to bully others. And it's not. We have to put an end to all of this unconscious behavior. And I've been asked to do this as well lately. And I'm not going to lie, there are different levels to this. And my guides are having me go to a very high level with this. And it can be a little daunting because you don't know what the result is going to be, but you do know in your heart, in your soul, that you're honoring the highest timeline, that you're honoring the highest frequency. Because think about it. When you're in a self-empowered state, you empower other people. If they don't want to see you, you're like, yo, I honor you, babe. Do what's best for you. You don't take things personally anymore because you understand that it's just vibrational. I have a saying that goes, it's not personal, it's just vibrational. That saying is packed with so much wisdom just because if all of us started to see life through the lens of, hey, this person isn't deliberately trying to hurt me, they're just saying yes to themselves, we would be able to disentangle ourselves from the web of unhealthy bondage that we have with people, of codependency that we have with people. It's so dysfunctional, it's so unhealthy to live that way. If we could all look at each other and say, you're a sovereign being, I'm a sovereign being, I am self-sufficient, you are self-sufficient, and we empower each other in our self-sufficiency, then that would be a game changer. But I think a lot of us are afraid to forge that pathway. We're afraid to be the forerunners of this higher consciousness. But think about how much the universe is going to give to you when you do that. Because you're the odd fish out of water who's deciding to remain the odd fish out of water and not feed into people's disempowerment. And my higher self was telling me the other day that even with biology, even with your immediate family, you might be asked to do this. Because if you don't, they're always going to stay in this unconscious state. And your job isn't to change them. Your job isn't to heal them, but your job is to honor your highest self. Does this make sense, you guys? Thank you so much for the donations. I appreciate you. I just felt such a need to drop in with you guys tonight because navigating this awakening isn't a small endeavor, it's massive. This is huge. And the guilt can run so deeply in so many of us that we're afraid to take that leap into the unknown. We're afraid to trust ourselves enough to say yes to ourselves, which people will take as a no. They will take it as rejection, but really it's just redirection. You're showing them that they too have God within them. They too have source within them. And you're simply reorienting them so that they too someday can become empowered. Awakening isn't easy. And the more that you awaken, the more that you can see. And the more that you can see, the more you will be asked to do things that you don't always want to do. These are called initiations. They're initiations into higher states of consciousness. You're graduating out of the old and into the new. And then the new becomes old, and then you're asked to go again. It's like a game, it's all a game. But I want you to know that when you're awake, a lot of people aren't going to agree with what you're doing because you're not adhering to their rules. You're not meeting their expectations, which, by the way, most of the time are just self serving. You can't pick me up from the airport, you're a horrible person. What if you're just busy that day? What if you're just tired that day? Right? In an abundant universe, in an unlimited universe, no one would ever shame each other. No one would ever blame each other. No one would ever throw a fit and say, you weren't there for me. That's all ego. It's all puffed up egos that are duking it out with other egos. And we don't have to play in that anymore. So again, I just don't want people to have this misconception or this false idea that when they awaken, that they're not going to visit with family anymore, that they're not going to visit with friends anymore. The true Buddha is the Buddha in the battlefield. The true Yeshua is the Yeshua that's friends with prostitutes, that's friends with everyone. So we have to learn how to be friends with everyone. But it doesn't mean we have to be friends with all the energies that are floating in their field. We all have really nice attributes, and then we all have things that we need to work on. All of us. And it's all about self-responsibility and accountability. Hey, I recognize that I'm being unconscious. I'm going to clean that up real quick. I recognize that I'm not being the kindest, or maybe I'm projecting a lot of my issues onto you. Maybe I'm just dumping all my stuff onto you. So now I'm going to clean that up. Now I'm going to start raising my frequency even more, taking myself to a whole other level of consideration, of respect, of honor, of valuing others. Yes? We really have to start living in our truth and knowing that we're not saying no to others. We're simply saying yes to ourselves. It's not always easy. It's not always evident, but it is necessary. It is necessary to uphold our highest frequency. Because think about it. There are higher beings in the universe, if you will. And they're like, man, they're twiddling their thumbs like, man, when is humanity going to come on board already? Like, it's taking us so long. Obviously, everything is perfect from the higher viewpoint, but think about these higher beings who are like, man, are these people ever going to get to it already? So if you can be that ambassador, that one emissary of light and love that acts as a catalyst for the people around you, then you're accelerating this process for those around you. They're not going to know it at the time, especially if they're still stuck in victimhood, especially if they're still stuck in delegating blame games, especially if they're still stuck in pointing the finger, especially if they're still stuck in talking smack about others. But eventually they're going to see the light of the day. And you've just done a huge, tremendous service for the entire universe. Just you alone, just by honoring your truth. Most people, my friends, are scared to go there, which is why it takes so long for humanity to evolve. It takes so long. It's a very strung out process because there aren't enough individuals stepping up to the plate once they awaken to own their truth, to really own their truth. So I'm asking you tonight to look deep into your heart, okay, and to start decluttering yourself and taking a strong look and examining what it is that you're doing to perpetuate the issues in your life, to perpetuate people blaming you and pointing the finger at you, because that's all ours. Once we're awake as creators, as creator beings, we're responsible for all of it. All of it. You cannot become a creator if you're not responsible for yourself. You cannot become a creator if you don't fully take accountability for what you're still inviting into your life. It's all a game of consciousnesses. So I have my own energy field with all these different fish swimming around, and you have your own energy field with all these fish swimming around. Are we going to only feed the conscious fish? Because those old realities have to die out. We can't keep playing in them. It's all unconsciousness, all of it. So think about the contribution and the impact that you're going to have on this planet if you imprint it with this self-responsibility of, I'm always going to say yes to me, even though it's going to hurt the little human, it's going to bruise their little ego. It's just their ego. Eventually, they're going to relinquish their control. Eventually, they're not going to try to make you feel bad. They're not going to say, you weren't there for me. You're not meeting my expectations. I'm so disappointed in you. Disappointment comes from disempowerment. Because in an abundant universe, there's no need to be disappointed in anyone. If you're honoring what's true for you, I'm happy for you. If I'm honoring what's true for me, people will be happy for me. But there's no more expectations. There's no more attachment. Attachment leads to emotional bondage, and emotional bondage leads to suffering. Suffering. Imagine how we can rise as a people if we start respecting each other's free will. Hey, you're too tired to pick me up from the airport? I completely understand. I'm going to get the next Uber because I'm abundant. I have millions in my spiritual bank account. I don't need you to pick me up from the airport. I understand you. Yes? And I'll even stop by and get a coffee so that when you wake up from your nap, I'm going to surprise you with a latte. That's empowerment, my friends. We have to stop with all this attachment and this bondage. It's dysfunctional. It pollutes us. It infects us. We have to get out this spiritual sanitizer, right? The spiritual sanitizer, and start sanitizing our souls. The people in your life are not going to agree with you being in this self-empowered state. But guess what? They will learn from it. And it might take a small amount of time, or it might take a whole lifetime, depending on how stubborn they are. But we are here to surrender. We are here to suspend our control, to suspend this old way of dictating how people should be, dictating how people should behave. That's old. It's old news. It's outdated. It's an old paradigm. People do what they want to do. And sometimes we have a hard time accepting that, but it's the truth. If someone doesn't want to text you back, they're doing what they want to do. You don't need to then text them again and say, why aren't you texting me back? That's disempowerment. They're not texting you back because they don't feel like it. Simple. People do what they want to do from moment to moment. Simple. Let's empower each other. This is soul family. This is us vibrating in unison, in harmony, to uplift the collective. All right, my friends? So I thank you for being here tonight. And if you enjoyed this message and you would like to donate, I appreciate it. I don't expect it, but my link is feelgoodlife.com/donate. feelgoodlife.com/donate. I also appreciate you subscribing and liking. This way we can spread this message. I love you so much. Take care.